Welcome to Big Brave Business. This is the podcast where we answer big questions reshaping entrepreneurship. I'm Sarah K. Heater, and this is Season 3. Each week, I'm bringing on my friends, mentors, and some of the best thought leaders I know. We dive into bold, values-driven conversations about leadership, equity, ethics, and building businesses that actually make a difference. Ready to do business better? Let's dive in. Welcome back to Big Brave Business. It's just you and me again this week. I'm excited to be spending a little more time one-on-one with you this season. I do have a lot of guest episodes. I'm really excited to have conversations, dialogue with other people, but I'm also really excited just to spend a little more time just you and me because, spoiler alert, I am writing a book. I'm working on my first business book, and it is largely inspired by the conversations that we have on this podcast. And one thing that I've learned for sure is that if I'm going to write a book, I'm going to have to be a little bit more tactical about what do you do with all of these really big, messy, brave conversations about business. A few weeks ago, I did an episode about how I personally have built a framework that works for me pretty well for assessing whether advice or information about how to build a business, whether that's in a podcast or on social media or from a coach or in a group program or a well-meaning friend who you meet in a networking group or somebody on stage at a business conference, or all these ways that we are inundated with information and advice. How do you assess whether that advice is good or bad? And how come there's so much bad advice out there? And how do you navigate that? And so a few weeks ago, I did an episode about that, about how to assess that. And I'm going to make sure that's linked in the description of the episode or the show notes so that you can go back and easily find that if you haven't already listened to it. But essentially, a quick summary is that there's two layers to measuring whether advice is good or bad. The first one is, does it actually work? Because some advice out there sucks because it doesn't work. Number two, is it aligned with your core values, with your personal ethics, with the person you want to be, the leader you want to be, the business you want to build? And then, like, kind of an extra layer of that same question is, does it cause harm, right? And that is kind of the foundation for what we're doing here. But this is going to be taking this a step further to actually be able to audit your business, all the different elements of what goes into your business, to actually make incremental business decisions, not just raise awareness about all of these different aspects of how to do business. It's the practical application layer. And I don't want this to be overwhelming. This is not about shame. This is not about perfection. This is clarity and prioritization. And it's a tool that you can use no matter what stage of business you're in, no matter what size team you have. You can use this to audit all the different aspects of your business. And yes, there is a resource, so I will make sure that that is linked in the description of the episode for you to be able to go download it. First and foremost, just take it in and explore with me. Don't let it overwhelm you. So, ethics alone is not enough if your business cannot support your basic needs. And that is why we really need both pieces. Does it work and is it aligned? Also, alignment without efficacy still leaves opportunity, care, and impact on the table for yourself, for your family, for your clients. Okay, so just because you think it feels good, and this is like a rage baity thing that I see a lot of people get wrapped up into, is it feels good to reject norms that we know are not aligned or that are harmful practices, even when that leaves us broke. Being broke actually feels almost like a badge of honor for some of us. But the truth is that you are a better creative, you are a better parent, you are a better friend, you are treating yourself better. Self-care is a luxury item, and it is a privilege that not everybody has the same access to. So being able to care for yourself as a human and being able to care for the people you love, and of course being able to care for your clients, doesn't exist if it's not effective. Okay, so we need both. It needs to be aligned and effective. So this is about building something better than what we left, better than what we don't want to be a part of, what we reject, better than the status quo, better than the industry norm or industry standard, but also better than the capitalist system currently makes us believe business has to look like. It does not have to look unethical. It does not have to look exploitative. So we get to build something better, but we also get to build something that's actually sustainable and supportive. So let's talk about the actual audit framework. This is just going to give you a little bit of a roadmap. We're going to start high level, we're going to dig in a little bit, and then I'm actually going to give you like tangible examples of how to actually do the audit. We're auditing potentially every single part of your business, every single asset, every single element, every single system, process, decision. Everything. We're going to audit it all. And in order to make that remotely possible and remotely navigable, there's 5 categories that we're going to look at for this audit that encompasses every aspect of your business. 1 is marketing, 2 is sales, 3 is offers, 4 is delivery slash client or customer experience, and 5 is operations. So let's start with marketing, and I'm going to give you an example of a bunch of different assets that we can look at within marketing. And I want to be really specific here. Marketing and sales need to be distinctly separate. I think a lot of online business coaches and online business programs and people who teach you how to start an online business, a lot of people avoid sales conversations and they only talk about marketing. When I look at the coaches that I've followed, the coaches that I've hired, the group programs that I've been a part of, even the podcasts that I listen to, spaces that are led by women often really talk about marketing, not sales. Probably a lot of us who are listening to this, we probably have a lot of gaps in our sales category. Anyways, let's look at some of the tangible assets that we are going to individually audit. And we're actually going to audit literally every single individual asset we can think of. That's how this works. Now, you don't have to do it all at once. You can focus on the things that are like a bigger priority to you in that moment. Right now, I'm really looking at sales. That's like a big part of what we're focused on this year is really closing some skill building gaps with our sales processes, etc. You also could pick and choose depending on who you're partnered with, like who is a service provider you work with, who's a consultant you work with, who are your team, like what specialists you have on your team, what are they responsible for, and being able to go through and audit the specific assets they are responsible for, and then be able to audit together. Or you audit yourself and you bring the audit to them as far as creating strategy for moving forward. So, okay, for marketing, we're going to look at assets like your website, like overall, but also specific landing pages could be part of that. Your email list, your newsletters, all the social media platforms, your podcast, if you have one, or a YouTube channel, blog or SEO content, any advertising you do, lead magnets or free resources, partnerships or collaborations, which could include affiliates, guests being on podcasts, cross promotion, any PR that you're doing. So any press coverage, any features, any stage speaking, community content, so free groups, any space where you're building an audience. And this could also include, of course, like brand voice, messaging consistency, your visual brand and design choices. So everything that goes into like marketing. Then we're also going to look at all of these different assets under sales, like sales calls or consultations, any sales pages, checkout or payment process, follow-up sequences, objection handling, DMs or conversational sales, proposal process, enrollment, like literally anything that goes into your actual sales process. Then we're going to look at offers. And in offers, you're also going to look at pricing structure. You're going to look at payment plans. You're going to look at bundles, upsells, downsells, offer positioning, guarantees, refund policies, capacity limits, offer pathways, all kinds of things related to your offer. Now, delivery slash client or customer experience. This is what happens after the sale. So we're going to audit things like your onboarding process, your communication systems, support access for like how clients or customers get help, program structure, delivery method, accessibility within your delivery, feedback collection, boundaries and expectations, offboarding and completion process, alumni continued support, and even the results that your clients or customers are getting from the offers. And then the fifth and final one is operations. This is your entire behind the scenes engine. So in here, we're going to audit all of your assets like internal systems and automations, data tracking, metrics, KPIs, financial management, team structure, if you have one, your decision making processes, your time management and capacity planning, your tech stack, any tools you use, AI usage, legal policies, contracts, everything that goes into your operations. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to just pick a category to start with, and you're going to start going through tangible assets. Now, I know this sounds like a lot. You don't have to do it all at once. Also, this is an ongoing thing. Like, this is a forever thing. And hopefully, what ends up happening is this is incorporated into all of the decision making and strategic planning that you're doing along the way, is you're able to do this audit right then and there. So, you're going to pick a place to start. So, like, let's say I'm going to just say social media, just to give you like a quick and dirty example of how this would work. And you're going to give it two scores. So your first score is, does it work? And your second score is it aligned? Now, I want to be really clear that those are yes or no questions. Does it work and is it aligned? But instead of just a yes or no, it's actually way more nuanced than that. And the easiest way for us to be able to identify gaps and to be able to create incremental steps forward in improving the overall audit is to actually give it a sliding scale score instead of a yes or a no. So again, it's going to be on a scale of 1 to 5. And first, you're going to be looking at, does it work? And then you're going to be looking at, is it aligned? So it's going to get two separate scores each out of 5. So 10 total possible points. Now, you're not just winging it, just picking, I don't know, it feels like a 3. No, I've got a more detailed layer for really measuring, I guess, lenses to measure where it fits on that scale of 1 to 5. Now, this is not a test. You're not being graded. You don't have to show anyone your work. This is literally just for you. Now, if you want to do this with somebody, like if you want to work on this with me, if you want to work on this with someone on your team, if you want to work on this with your coach, you totally can, but you also can just do it solo. It's just for you. So there's no right or wrong answer, and everybody's answers are going to look different. That's the other thing. Everybody's business looks different. And also, your own core values, your own ethics, and your own efficacy are going to look different because what works for you might not work for somebody else, and what works for somebody else might not work for you. What you feel really aligned doing, somebody else might have objections to, and what somebody else might really feel good about doing and they're confident and excited might not feel good for you. It's going to be messy. Just lean into the fact that it's going to be messy. And part of quote unquote doing the work is to think about it as assume it's going to be messy and just work toward, instead of perfection and being able to check it off and say you're done, work toward incremental improvement. When we're talking about does it work and we're looking at this scale of 1 to 5, here's 4 different lenses that you can use to assess how well it's working. So, first of all, we're going to look at performance for everything. I'm going to use the example of social media, but also these are the same 4 lenses you're going to use for all of the categories. Like every single item on the list that you're auditing, you're going to use these same 4 lenses. Okay, so to assess how well something's working, first, we're going to consider performance. When I say performance, I mean, is it getting traffic? Is it getting conversions? Is it producing revenue? What are the outcomes? The second thing is clarity. Are you measuring that stuff? And do you know where people are dropping off? Can you explain what is happening? So, this is really going to look at the measurability, the statistics, the metrics. Are you keeping track of that? And do the metrics reflect that it's working? The third lens is consistency. Is it reliable or is it random? Does it work only in bursts? Does it depend on your mood or your bandwidth? What is the consistency like? And then the fourth lens is efficiency. So, is the result worth the time, energy, money, and labor required? So, let me walk you through, for me personally, these 4 lenses for social media. Performance. Am I getting sales from my social media? Yes. Am I making connections? Am I making friends? Am I staying connected to people who I care about maintaining a relationship with collaboratively or prospective clients? Yes, definitely. That's definitely true. I think it could be performing better because quite honestly, I really don't have a social media strategy. So, does it produce an intended result? Yes. But I know the performance could be much, much better if I was more strategic. Okay. So performance is there. It's not great, but it's there. And part of that is clarity. This is the second lens, right? I don't measure my like performance on social media at all. I mean, I guess I look occasionally at my follower count, but I don't know how different posts are performing. I'm not tracking that. Am I measuring it? No. Like literally no. And then consistency. Is it reliable or random? It's random. My consistency is so random. When I feel like posting, I post. There is no consistent strategy for my social media. And then efficiency. Is the result worth the time, energy, money, and labor required? I would say, like, yes, as in I don't really put a lot of time, energy, money, or labor into my social media. I do think it could be much more effective if I actually put a little more time and energy and labor into it, but it hasn't been a priority for me. So, if I'm just going to audit, does it work? Then one is going to be it's literally not working. Like I'm not getting any results. Three is going to be the middle, right? And so that's like mixed or unclear. Five is clear, measurable, repeatable, efficient. I think we can all agree it's not a five. It is not a clear, measurable, repeatable, or efficient scenario. So I'm going to actually say that for does it work? I'm going to give myself like a 2.5, I guess. I feel like three is maybe a little optimistic because there really is no strategy going into it. That said, I do have connections with people, so I don't want to like score it too low. So I'm going to say a 2.5. Listen, yes, it's a number, so technically it is math, but it's not rocket science. It doesn't have to be precise. Totally fine. Now we're going to score, is it aligned? And this is just such an important part of this because there's all kinds of advice about how I could improve my social media strategy, but what the hell do I do with all of that, right? Like, that's a lot of information to take in of all of the different strategies I could be doing on social media. And yes, I could already use those four lenses to make progress. And I think that's where most people stop. But the alignment part is so important when it comes to actually building something better and interrogating these systems that actually do perpetuate harm. Here are the four lenses for is it aligned? First of all, values integrity. Does it reflect what I say I believe? Secondly, impact. Okay. Who's included? Who's excluded? Who's disadvantaged? What harm might be created? One thing I specifically want to talk about here is I want to make sure that when we talk about inclusion and exclusion, that we're not just looking at what you think you're doing to be inclusive, because I think that anybody listening to this has really good intentions and you're probably trying to be as inclusive as possible. You're not actively going out there trying to cause harm. And so that already kind of puts you ahead of the curve when it comes to inclusivity. That being said, your intentions are only half the battle, because who's actually showing up and who's actually engaging with that aspect of your business, whatever it is that you're assessing, that is going to give you a lot more information. So here's a great example. I would like to think that my social media does not actively perpetuate harm other than the fact that it's a meta platform. However, I do think that if I was truly being as inclusive as I would like to be on my social media, then my followers would reflect that. So, one way to see who's being included or excluded when it comes to, say, social media is to audit your actual followers and take a look. So, I'm a white woman. I've actually never looked at my followers. Like I said, not really tracking stuff. Hence, my does it work score is as low as it is. But if I was going to do a really fair audit for who is included and who is excluded from my quote unquote social media strategy, I would, if I was being really honest with myself, I would go look and see, are Black women following me? Are Black women engaging with my posts? Are Black women in my DMs? And if they're not, whether I mean to be exclusive or not, there is a reason why, maybe many reasons why, right? And so That is something to consider when you're measuring inclusive versus exclusive. This is a hard one if you're going to be really, really honest with yourself. There's so many ways we're looking at this, right? Like most of the clients that I serve when I'm interrogating like my offers or my client experience or my sales process, most of the people I serve in my business are white women. Not all of them, but most of them are white women. And so if I'm doing this audit and I'm specifically looking at impact and I'm asking the questions of who's included and who's excluded, then I need to be really, really honest with myself about things like, where are my leads coming from? How is my sales process inclusive or not? Where is the drop off point for different demographics of people that I would say it's important to me to be inclusive for based on my own core values? And that's going to look different for everybody. I mean, like attracts like. So listen, white women are going to be the easiest people for me to attract because I am a white woman. We have a lot of shared lived experiences. However, my goal is not to only impact white women. And hopefully, if you follow me on social media, hopefully you know that. But that's something that you're going to want to interrogate. So the lenses for aligned, just to recap: values integrity, does it reflect what I say I believe? And then impact, who's included, who's excluded. The third lens for is it aligned is experience. So how does this feel for the person who is engaging with whatever the thing is that you're auditing? So what is the feeling or the experience had by the user, basically? And then the fourth and final lens under is it aligned is internal alignment. And so this is really like digging into your nervous system. Does it feel good in your body? Does it feel clean in your body? Does it feel tense, pressured, performative, off in any way? Like just a true gut check. How does this feel in my nervous system? And so those four lenses are going to help you come up with your second score, which is your alignment score. So one would be deeply misaligned. Three would be mixed or unresolved tension. And five is going to be clear, intentional, deeply values consistent. Okay, so with my personal social media, now I've not brought up like my followers. So as far as like I was saying, being really honest about interrogating like the impact piece, I'm going to make a guess based on who I feel like I interact with and engage with the most on social media. If I was doing a more thorough job, I would actually like pull up my Instagram followers and look through them, look at like the posts. But you know what? That's part of why my clarity score was low for does it work? So values integrity. Does it reflect what I say I believe? I think for the most part, I don't show up on Instagram and say anything I don't believe. I think that that's true. However, I do post a lot of content that has no strategic value at all and is just kind of posting for connection, posting for the sake of posting, posting for the sake of, as they say, keeping my porch light on with like my story bubble. If you don't know what I mean by that, just disregard. But I sometimes post just to post. So I don't think it ever like actively goes against what I say I believe, but it could be more strategically dialed in with ensuring that everything is going through a values integrity filter of, does this specific post have anything to do with my specific core values? And if not, it doesn't need to get posted. Okay, then for impact. So again, who's included, who's excluded? I don't think that my social media actively causes harm. In the last like 10 years, I've worked really, really hard to really engage in unlearning and in anti-racism and in doing a better job, even accessibility. That's a little bit newer of a journey for me, but I think I like actively do really try and I have made a lot of progress, but there's always going to be room for improvement here. And so I think that's pretty decent as well. Experience, how does this feel for the person on the receiving end? I'm going to be honest, I don't put a lot of effort into my social media, and I've always said I'm nobody's favorite person to follow on social media because I don't think I'm creating any kind of experience for the follower. Now, I don't think it's a negative experience, but I don't think it's creating any kind of experience that's meaningful or positive either. And I'm not saying that to be hard on myself. I don't mean it like that. I'm just being really honest about like, I know what my favorite accounts are to follow, and I'm not doing anything to be someone's favorite account. So I think experience has a lot of room for improvement, but it's not actively harmful. Okay. Internal alignment, does this feel good in my body? Does it create tension, pressure? Does it feel performative? Does it feel off? For the most part, no. I mean, I do feel pressure to show up more, but I think generally speaking, showing up when I feel like showing up, that feels pretty aligned. I feel like how I engage, how I post, what I choose to share, that all feels pretty aligned. So I think most of this is pretty good. So I think out of the score of 1 to 5, I think I'm gonna say like a 3.5 or 4. There's always room for improvement, but I feel pretty good about it, about how I show up. So there's things I'm not willing to do or not interested in doing, but I think generally speaking, I'm not doing those things. So I would say, let's even just go ahead and say a 4. So I think I gave myself a 2.5 for the first score, a 4 for the second one. So that's like a 6.5 out of 10. And you can see where the obvious clear gaps are as far as what I could do to make incremental steps forward. Now, what I love about this process, what I love about this system is that you can not only see where the gaps are, but you can also see how much impact you could make by just incremental changes. Because that's something that I've always stressed to people. I built a 6-figure business with less than 1,000 followers on any social media platform. I now have over 1,000, but my point is, I don't have a really good social media strategy and I still built a multi 6-figure business. You can have a really successful business without social media being the primary driver for your marketing and sales. So that is totally fine with me. But you can see if I already have a multi 6-figure business with no social media strategy, imagine if my social media strategy just got more consistent. If that's the only thing I improved was just more consistency and maybe a little bit of measuring, a little bit of measuring, then I could go from a 6.5 to a 7.5 or even an 8 out of 10 just from making those incremental changes. That's not going to be a huge change. It doesn't mean I need to like show up and post a reel every day and post 7 times a day on specific hours. Like, I don't have to do all of that. I just need to be more consistent and actually measure what I'm doing. And if I did those two things, I could make incremental changes that would have a dramatic impact on my business. And then we just continue to incrementally improve along the way. So that's a really cool, easy example. I hope that this can also really help you see, look, everybody's business is messy, okay? Everybody's business is messy. And it's so funny because I'm working with a couple different consultants this year. And one of them, actually, probably both of them, but both of the two that I'm thinking of, but one of them in particular, I really led into quite a lot of the mess. And I did say to her, like, hey, now you see how messy this is. And she said, Sarah, every business is messy. This is honestly nothing. And she told me some stories and some examples of some people she's worked with in the past who are doing 10 times the amount of revenue that I'm doing, who have their client schedule written out on a sheet of paper that's folded up, who have their leads listed out on a legal pad, so all of that to say, all of these things that you're going to audit by showing you my own examples, my own scores, I hope that that will inspire you that everybody's business is messy and that's okay because what we're doing with this audit is the quote unquote the work to make steps forward and to make strides in improving, and that all of us can do that. And that's literally what I think our responsibility is as big, brave business owners is to care about doing incrementally better. And this is also exactly why what quote unquote works is not binary. And what is quote unquote good advice or bad advice is not binary. It's not a this is good and this is bad. It's not that simple, right? It's actually really layered and complicated. And so I do have that whole other episode. I'm going to make sure that's linked in the show notes. But this is exactly why I think it's so important to have these different frameworks to use because it is really overwhelming. And especially when you like really care about the ethics, it gets messy. Let's use another example and then I will just give you some more like last minute tips and we'll wrap up this episode. So, another example I wanted to go through is website. So, I'm going to talk about my website as a whole and I'm going to look at those two scores going through the four lenses for each. All right. So, this is not going to shock you because there's going to be some overlap. Let's look at the four lenses for does my website work? Is it producing the intended result? So this is performance. This is the first lens. Is it producing results? Yeah. I mean, that's the only way to book a call with me or with my team is through the website. So we book calls. And so, like, yeah, it works. That said, under the second lens, clarity, am I measuring the traffic, the conversions? No, I have literally no idea how many people are visiting my website. I have no idea where people drop off. I cannot explain what is happening with the user journey on my website. I have literally no idea. I have okay. I have a pretty good idea that I have very, very low traffic from like Google search results because when somebody books a call, I pretty much can pretty quickly figure out, if not immediately, where that person came from, how they found us. So if that's the case, then I know they're not just randomly Googling us because I know where they came from and it wasn't Google. So there's a lot of measurement opportunity here and therefore also a lot of performance opportunity. I do know that for sure. Consistency. Is it reliable? I mean, yeah, I don't think it only works in bursts. I think that it does not depend on my mood. It does not depend on my bandwidth. The website is functional. Is it reliably bringing me business? No, but it functions the way it needs to function for the bare minimum. So I think consistency is okay. And then efficiency. Is the result worth the time, energy, money, and labor required? I manage my own website. So, I mean, it's not the most efficient because when something needs to be updated or the entire thing needs to be revised, it's me. That's who does it. I write all the copy. I carefully cultivate all of the imagery. Like, all of that is me. And I am not a webmaster professional. So, is that the best use of my time, energy, and labor? Certainly not. But it is a great use of money, as in, I don't pay a lot for it. So, on a scale of 1 to 5, I would say, I mean, I feel like this is a pretty solid 3, mixed, unclear, maybe even a 2.5 again, like social media, as in, I'm not measuring anything. And I also know it could be working so much better. Certainly not a 5. Certainly not clear, measurable, repeatable, and efficient. Definitely not. I'm going to say 3. Listen, I'm not embarrassed to give out my website URL. And that says a lot. I think that when I started my business, I was very embarrassed for people to go to my website. That was like, I was like, oh God, don't look at it. So we've come a long way. Okay, let's look at the lenses for is it aligned? So, first, value integrity. Does it reflect what I say I believe? I believe it does. I believe the copy. I believe the imagery. I believe the structure. I believe it reflects what I say I believe pretty well. For the most part, yes. Okay, impact. Who's included, who's excluded, and this includes accessibility. Okay. I think that there's a lot about my website that is very inclusive. Accessibility is not it. I don't think it's super navigable by screen readers. I think that we've worked really hard to improve like formatting as far as making sure everything's left aligned, making sure the color contrasts are good. Like all of those things we have definitely made an effort on. Listen, there's a lot that could be improved with accessibility. I think there's a lot worse websites out there and I think it could be better. So yeah, it's not a miss, but it has room for improvement. Experience, how does it feel for the person on the receiving end? I mean, I've actually heard for the most part really good things about the imagery and the copy on my website. This is something that like I've regularly gotten feedback that's really good, like unsolicited from clients or prospective clients or network connections or whatever. I've heard really good things. That said, I also have spoken on stages where I've given out the website URL for like our booking page, like launchmyshow.com, where you can actually just directly go book a call. You don't have to navigate the website and like find where the call booking is. We have a direct line to, hey, here's how you book, launchmyshow.com. And at conferences, when I've given that out, or whatever landing page for whatever offer or like freebie or whatever, I have heard from people a surprising number of questions before they go book a call. It honestly always surprises me. So I think there's probably room for improved experience, and that's probably largely because I am not a web professional. Final lens, internal alignment. Does it feel good? Does it create tension, pressure? Does it feel performative? Does it feel off? Yeah. I mean, I honestly, like I said, not embarrassed to give out my website, and that is huge progress. I think it could be better, but I feel good about what's there. That's the truth. I wish it was a little more accessible, but otherwise, like, I think it's fine. So, assign 1 to 5. I'm going to go with like a 4.5. I think that there's room definitely for improvement with accessibility, but for the most part, I think it's pretty clear, it's pretty intentional, and it's pretty values consistent, just not quite there. So, I'm going to say a 4.5. So, my website score, higher than my social media. Would I have expected that? Not necessarily. There's an immediate clarity issue. We know that with metrics tracking, that's like something that would be an easy incremental step forward. I don't want to say fix, but like an incremental step forward. Definitely, I have some conversion, so there's some performance there. There's some alignment tension because of the accessibility issues and just navigability of the overall website, like that overall user experience. I think there's a little room for improvement. So, your high impact takeaway. A website can look on brand, it can feel values aligned, and it can still fail accessibility standards. And this is the kind of thing that this audit helps us really assess to be able to make incremental changes and identify the gaps. Here's some tips that I want to make sure I leave you with. When we're talking about our offers or anything like that, we want to consider, are people actually buying? Are they converting? Are they completing your programs? To what degree are they completing? So if you have a course, that's a pretty obvious one, like what's the completion rate? But if it's something that has a retention model, like for me, I offer podcast production services. How long am I retaining clients? Where is the drop off happening? Why are they choosing not to stay when they do choose to stop? Who's staying, right? That's another piece of this, is again looking at not just who's following you on social, who's scheduling calls with you, who's actually converting into your offer, and how does that retention rate compare across different demographics of people that you're serving? Are they renewing? Are they getting intended result? I think results is like such a huge piece of this. So what does your retention and completion rate tell you? What is your feedback like? Who is your offer built for? Who is it realistically not built for? Does it create dependency or autonomy? Are the outcomes realistic? Is the pricing inside the offer structure aligned? What demographics, like I said, are actually buying and getting results? Because I used 2 marketing examples. I didn't go into any examples from other things that like I'm auditing in my business, but let me give you an offer example real quickly. And this is actually not a current offer, so I'm not going to go through the lenses. I'm just going to show you what the result is of doing an audit like this, what it could look like. So if you've been listening to this if you're an OG of this podcast and you've been around for a while, then you heard me talk years ago about opening a membership. So we started this membership for podcasters who are not in the market for production services. Either they're DIYing or they're under contract with another editor or whatever, or they just don't have the budget to hire us. So they're working with somebody else, whatever it is. But we still wanted to make sure that more podcasters had access to the strategic support that we offer on the production side. So we created this membership with the intention that we were going to have, and we did have 2 live calls a month. One was like a Q&A, ask anything. And then the other one was like a thematic training. So it had like a specific topic, like, I don't know, how to host a really good interview or how to guest on other people's podcasts, right? And then we also had replays, transcripts, audio versions and video versions, like all kinds of things, right, that went into that offer. And with the intention that we wanted to help more underrepresented voices get past episode 11. That is like a huge part of Podfox's mission. And so this membership felt really, really aligned. And it was selling. We had people signing up for the offer, paying, staying. Many people stayed for multiple years. So from that sense, it was working. It was profitable. And then the content was so good. Like I knew the work I was doing was such good work. In fact, I still repurpose and use the content from those trainings and Q&As because the membership was open for about 2 years. So you may be wondering, why is it past tense then? Why did I close the membership? I closed the membership because it wasn't getting results, because people were signing up, but they were treating it like a gym membership. They weren't coming live. They were sort of using the replays. They weren't engaging with the content, which meant they weren't getting results. And I'm not really trying to do business so that I can just take people's money. That's not the point. I want to help people get results. So if my offer is not actually achieving the intended result, then it's not aligned for me. So, yes, it worked, as in it was profitable, but it was not a good offer. It's not an effective offer. So, good and bad is not binary when it comes to business, and that is complicated. So, anyway, profitable does not mean it's working, and aligned intention, it was so aligned with our mission, but and I'm really proud of the work that we put into it, but it wasn't effective for people. So that's like some of the things that you learn from doing an audit like this, right? Because if you're just doing a meeting with your bookkeeper and they're like, yep, great job. Like you're in the black, like your books look clean, you're making good money, people's payments are on time, overall revenue is increasing. Like if you're just looking at just this limited window of, yes, I'm making money, then you don't have the full picture. And vice versa. You can feel great about your business, but if you're not making any freaking money, then it's not working. It's not working. And the more information we have, the more your own ethical alignment or misalignment is going to continue to get clearer. It's messy and you can change your mind also. Operations are where your values actually become infrastructure. And I think that's where, when we think about like performative ethics, saying you believe something, but then it not actually showing up in the way you make decisions and in your systems and in your tech stack and all of that, that's where it's really, really noticeable in the way you hire, in the way you manage your team, like all of those things. Honestly, then your values are not part of your business. So let's talk about what you do with the scores. This is where you're analyzing the gap. If your work score is higher than your alignment score, that means something is making you money, but it doesn't actually like align with your ethics. It's ethically tense. You want to interrogate harm, exclusion, power, pressure, consent, all kinds of these different elements. That's what you're really going to interrogate there, because just because it works doesn't mean you have to keep it the way that it is. In fact, it's probably perpetuating harm in some way, whether it's perpetuating harm to you, yourself, or your clients or your followers or whatever it is. If your alignment is higher than your work score, which I think for a lot of us, that's probably going to be the case in a lot of cases. Because, like I said, I think a lot of people in this kind of community of people who prioritize business ethics, we will die on the hill of ethics broke. So, your intention is so good, but you still, in order to, like I said, be the best leader you can be the best taken care of you can be able to take care of the people in your life to the best capacity that you can, and frankly, to take care of your clients and customers to the best capacity that you can, it has to work. I mean, it has to work. It's not enough to die mad about it. It's not actually helping anybody. So, your intention is really good, but we need to refine systems, clarity, strategy. Ethics does not need to require ineffectiveness. Like, that's a hard truth. So that's super important. And if both are low, then we're going to have an obvious improvement zone. This is like your most high priority thing to make incremental change to, because like I said, and hopefully I've expressed, if both of your scores are low for something, then all you need to do is a little bit better and it's going to have like a dramatic impact on both work and alignment. So obvious improvement zone, choose one small incremental fix at a time and watch the impact of that. And if both are high, If both of your scores are high, let's say you had a perfect score, 9.5 or 10 out of 10, protect this at all costs. And you want to really codify why this works, document it as a repeatable standard, and ensure that this is something that is protected. Like, this is something that you want to maintain, you want to be continued. You don't want to, if you hire a new service provider or you bring in a coach, the things that are scoring really high, they're working really well, and they're highly aligned. Do not let them change this. Like, not necessary. We want to protect this because it works. It works. It's good. Okay. So, as a reminder, don't try to audit everything in one sitting. Don't let it overwhelm you. We're going to pick one category at a time. We're going to pick an asset one at a time, and we're going to score it honestly, notice the gap, and decide what one number improvement might look like wherever your gap is. And you can start with a category, do several assets within the category. That's going to help you identify, again, what's urgent versus important. And then you can, again, like, just come up with these single improvements, single increments to improve in order to see a big impact. Like, really, really ask yourself, what changes for you if a score moves from a 2, which is not a good score, to a 3, which is a mid score? How much could change? That is the practical magic of this exercise. Okay. Hopefully, these upcoming episodes will give you some tangible ideas for what you can do to work towards those incremental things, but it's also just going to address some of the stuff that might come up in this audit for each of those specific assets. I do have a resource for you so that you can actually take all of the stuff that I covered in this episode. And yeah, I want to hear from you. If you are loving this, if it's bringing stuff up for you, if it's helpful, if something's missing, if I said something wrong, tell me. I want to engage with you about this. Thank you so much for hanging in there with me for a bit of a longer episode. I love you and I believe in you, and I'm so grateful you're here, and the world is a better place with you in it. With that said, I'll see you next week.